Friday, November 30th, 2018. Scott Hensler, Tinfoil Hat Club. Well, you know, we weren't on last week. We had some technical difficulties. We had some bad weather. The Wednesday prior to that was our first snow that we got in the deserts here of Nevada. And so I was dealing with quite a few things that kept us from getting on the air. Now, for that show prior to that, though, was the re-airing of the Thanksgiving show with JFK assassination involving LBJ. So if you hadn't had a chance to hear that, I suggest to go to it because there's a lot of information about the lie of Thanksgiving. Everything we've been told, everything we've learned in school, everything about history has been altered and changed. And for those who do not believe that, well, you know, you're just going to have to find out the hard way. And that is that in time, when things are supposed to be as they appear, they are not, and the confusion that can come out of that can cause you to not to deny the circumstances. And that's something that has really hit us all very hard. So with that, as I get into tonight, I've got a lot of content that I want to go over before bringing Trish on. Tonight, Mind Control by Radio and Radio Quiet Zone. She's going to be covering triggers once I establish the information that I give out. So with that, you know, Blog Talk, Spreaker, Podomatic, and YouTube, you know, I simulcast and or upload and post to those. So though MIXLR really doesn't allow you to download with Spreaker and for Podomatic, and of course YouTube, I've put those on for that ability. Now, we also may have the ability here in the next, maybe next week or so, did some changes with the satellite link that I have. And so I might be able to do video. We'll see. I'm going to be playing with that in the next couple of days just to see where it's at. So anyways, again, things are not as they appear. And as I talk about this tonight with Mind Control, I think it'll make some sense. Now, before Trish comes on with her information about the connection with technology and those things, what I want to get into is mind control and triggering can be used by radio, can be used to harm, to harass, torture victims such as TIs. And this means with psychotronics, with energy dispersed weapons, that one can be triggered with multiple personalities with MK Ultra, or harassed to the point that you would do something that you normally wouldn't do. It's out of your character. So these TIs range from victims of mind control, known as MK Ultra, and satanic ritual abuse, which is actually a combination. But the main subject tonight are the triggers used to set that in motion, to take over a person by their alter or MPD. Now, to do so, and doing this against their will, there is one main function that can take place in the potential, and that is to remove you from a safe place in your own mind. Now, when all the deliverances I've done over the past coming on 20 years, there's always a hurt, wounded individual, little girl, little boy within a person. This alter, this multiple, this MPD, having dissociation identity disorder, can put you in a position of fight or flight. Now, if there are programs that take place, otherwise you've been satanic ritually abused or been through MK Ultra, that these triggers can cause the different alters to come forth. So you can have one that would be an assassin. You can have one that would be sort of an agent to do a reconnaissance and track, or even to destroy, like bring down a ministry, bring down a corporation, come into a government and bring it down. So in order to do so, there's radio means, there's internet means, there's different communications, such, you know, your cell phone, which is actually a radio, a two-way radio or a transponder, that can interact through psychotronics, through voice to skull. And so this technology being used for mind control that if you're an individual who has hypersensitivity to electromagnetics anyways, and I do, kind of an odd thing for myself to be a ham radio operator, being one that is around any electromagnetics, such as radio transmitters, cell phones, Wi-Fi's, they can cause headaches, they can cause ringing of the ear, they can cause me to be lethargic, even irritable. So what I want to point out to you is that there is an area within the United States referred to as radio quiet zone. Now, you may be familiar with the Allegheny Mountains, especially in West Virginia, also crossing over to Pennsylvania, called the NRQZ, United States National Radio Quiet Zone. This area is encompassing 13,000 square miles, as again, telling you between Virginia and West Virginia, as well as Pennsylvania, including small parts of Maryland. Now, the reason for this radio quiet zone and the reason that I bring it up is if you are having issues, if you're being gang stalked via radio, if you're having headaches, if you're having ringing of the ears, trouble sleeping, this is an area that is policed by contractors to seek out any radio noise and to eliminate it. And the reason is for the space agencies to, like SETI, NASA, or any of the research of deep space to receive radio signals. And these radio signals can be so tiny and so small that, requires a tremendous large parabolic dish to receive them. And so any interference, including interference from an automobile, such as the computers on board, can actually cause static noise on their sensitive receivers. And so what it means is as you get closer into the zone, getting closer to the antennas that they use for receiving, the requirement is to use older automobiles that do not have computers. And there's mandates not to use cell phones, mandates not to use CB radios or ham radios or any other public communication, even computers like laptops. Even the computer that's within your cell phone can be an issue to cause interference. And again, the reason that I bring this up is you are able to enter these zones. There are small towns that have learned over the years not to use any of this communication. And what it means is that if you enter into this zone, does the voices in your head, does the irritation, does the ringing, does the irritable sensation that you have or the anxious feeling, does it go away? Because you need to understand that if a gang stalker, an agency, or anyone that's trying to harass you, that them to do this while you're in that zone means that they are violating federal communication. They are subject then to be handed over to the FBI and be arrested. Now, public broadcasting, such as radio and TV, is an issue. And so the Allegheny Mountains, the way that they kind of roll like waves through there, they've nestled this within several of the high peaks so that then they're shielded naturally by these radio broadcasts. And so they do not have the interference. So if you're thinking you're going to listen to a radio station or a TV station, that is not going to happen. And this is all for the protection of the radio telescope at Sugar Grove. Now, in Penton County, Pendeton, the observatory is also called Green Bank or GBO. Now, this is the one that they really protect, they really watch over. Now, during the Cold War and other circumstances that have to do with types of eavesdropping, trying to even cause radio jamming, this quiet zone had to be set aside because of that. And so it was very necessary not to interfere whatsoever with this receiver. And because of it scanning the skies, that even satellites is an issue. So that means that while the satellites do evolve and come over, and I'm not talking about a globe, satellites can be used on flat Earth, that they have to shut down for a time as they come over the radio telescope. And anything, again, that is generated by Wi-Fi, computers, cell phones, even automobiles, as I mentioned before. This quiet zone started back in 1956, 62 years ago. So that was the year that I was born. So it has been established, it has been policed, it has been controlled. And what it means, ladies and gentlemen, if you are thinking that you are mind controlled, if you are targeted, if you are harassed, go to this area, get on the map, look to the detailed roads that come in. You'll see signs as you come in that say this is a radio quiet zone. Please turn off your radio. No use of CB, no use of hand radio, no use of cell phones. And when you're able to get in there, now just think of this, no cell towers, nothing there to cause that irritation, that ringing, that, uneasiness of being around this. So the FCC established laws in 1958. Once they established it in 1956, they started realizing that normal broadcast or any of the other transmissions were a problem. So the FCC put laws in 1958 to protect this quiet zone. In 1969, a changeover to the naval radio station took place, becoming the ECH-ELN, and this is the surveillance program. So this also means when we say naval, when we say Pentagon, we're also talking about CIA. So this also includes the UK, Australia, New Zealand, and other monitoring stations around the country. So if you're listening to this and you're in New Zealand, you're in the England area, if you're in New Zealand, Australia, this area is also having monitors because they were monitoring the Soviets. So those are radio quiet zones in those particular areas, and you'll have to look them up. So again, this took place really during the Cold War. So that's a good point. She just pointed it out to me that if you do go there, please let me know if that works. If the voices in your head stop, if the irritation, the anxieties, because if you've got gang stalkers and they're following you around and they're pulling out their cell phones and they're trying to tag you with the transmission, they can be arrested. And when the FCC steps in, that can be a $10,000 a day fine for every offense, subject to the FBI for arrest. So this means that for the first time, this is a chance for the laws to finally work in your favor. So anyways, Edward Snowden, when he was a whistleblower and released everything in 2013, this forced the closing of the National Security and U.S. Naval Department at these observatories. So they're no longer part of the eavesdropping. They're no longer part of the Five Eyes, and I'll get into that in a minute. And they had to be relocated, and they were finally reestablished in 2015. So finalized by 2017, the private investment groups started buying up the areas within this quiet zone for research, which who knows what in the world this is going to be for. But the point of it is that this was a $4 million area that was obtained and potentially may be used as a healthcare facility because of the electromagnetic free quiet zone. So this is why I bring it up, because as we get into some of the issues with radio controlled mind control, just understand that if you're able to get into this area, you're going to have a 30-mile area, Sugar Grove, that is still in operation, meaning that it is still policed, still protected, regardless of the naval removing their facilities. So anyways, again, a radio telescope of 485 feet high, weighing 17 million pounds. Now that's a big antenna. And so again, the ability to receive signals that come out of space. And now the fact that we're in a dome, because I'm a flat earther, that whatever else they were trying to do with it, Who knows? But the point of it is this facility is policed. So this means this quiet zone still exists and is protected. Again, they've got contractors, technicians that constantly are on the move with their receiving equipment, tracking down radio noise, and then turning it over to the FCC or local authorities who are very inert to keep radio interference out, because it's very important for them, even the local authorities, because it means that the established or the radio telescope can still stay in operation, which brings money into their county. So again, why bring this up? Well, again, if you're hearing voices, getting ringing in your ears, anything of DEW weapons, all types of electronic harassment, that can potentially go away. And if that is the case, when you go there and that all stops, let me know. Now, let me bring something out too. I've told you in the past that those who are dealing with this type of issue can also be dealing with spiritual issues. So if you go there and you're still having harassment, you're hearing especially voices, then again, and can say most definitely that it is a spirit that is giving you a hard time. All right. Now, understand that gang stalkers, that if again they try to do anything in this area, they would be arrested. So the attack should stop. If they may verbally try and harass you, but again, if they try and do anything of electronic, this is going to be an issue for them. So that means then you can make a complaint to the police department. In the past, if you've been in, a regular metro area, they wouldn't listen to you. But because of the radio quiet zone, they have to listen to you, because again, you could just call the FCC up and have that taken care of. So again, they police this area and immediately detect any illegal use of radio harassment. So if they're using it, you may not even have to complain about it. They may pick it up and put a stop to it. So the FC rules maintain a radio quiet zone for this radio telescope. All right. So I encourage anyone to go to this area, and hopefully this will resolve those issues. If you have voices call technology being used on you, sure would be nice to have a nice quiet sleep for a change and not have that happen to you. All right. So take a drive, take a vacation, enjoy yourself. Winter's unfortunately moving in. They're going to have a hard winter this time. The sunspot cycles are minimal, and that means that the weather potentially of moving into much colder temperatures. They're talking even about a mini ice age. I'm not going to stand with that, because there has been a potential of increased sunspot cycle. But if it does not continue on the rise, these things are going to happen. And West Virginia, Maryland, Pennsylvania, those areas, they can have some very, very hard weather. Now, as I mentioned earlier about the Five Eyes, gang stalkers, contracted, you can have, let's say, the CIA here in the United States. You can have MI6 over in the UK. And what they'll do is they'll do an exchange program. So MI6 will send people over to the United States. CIA will send people over to the UK. And what they'll do is then they'll exchange their harassment programs. So if they're caught or there's anything that's brought forth, they can have deniability. And this Five Eyes, using cell towers all over the world, unfortunately, that those that are involved in this, that if there's, let's say, New Zealand, UK, Australia, all of them are part of this Five Eyes. And so some of the harassment that you're dealing with is unfortunately part of that circumstance. And, what kind of world did we live in that another human being would do something like this, especially someone who's hypersensitive to EMF, electromagnetic frequencies, or electromagnetic force. And this has become, again, one issue that is brought onto, us as citizens. People in Canada, they were dealing with MK Ultra mind control from the United States. The exchange programs that they're doing is beyond comprehension. So I just want you to know that the Five Eyes, unfortunately, is out there. And a lot of the harassment that you're dealing with is just that. All right, let's see here. All right, so one of the things I want to talk about is radio stations. Now, during the Cold War, really starting up after World War II, shortwave broadcast is the typical AM FM radio communication over in Europe. So if you were to buy a car like a Mercedes, you would get a radio in the car and it would most likely have shortwave on it. The United States isn't this way. We have AM FM and they're designated to certain bands. But shortwave can cover a vast variety of different bands, but it's still in the shortwave range. And so what it means is that these broadcasts can go long distance. The type of radios that we have here are dedicated to local areas. Now, what it means is that with the Iron Curtain, Russia, Germany, and even Cuba, for instance, that when you broadcast on shortwave, you can go from one country over to another, just not within a town, not just within a city, not within a county, or just even a one with located within one country. Shortwave will go over into other countries. There is no barriers. And so what they would do is they developed what they call numbering stations. Now, these numbering stations, they would have a regular broadcast. You may have a talk show, they may have music, and all of a sudden there would be an interruption. And you would hear a woman's voice typically, and they would start repeating numbers 7, 5, 9, 10, F, 4, and it would stop and go back to the broadcast. And what was taking place is that those doing espionage, those who were spies, and also those who were under the MK Ultra mind control, these were triggers. And these triggers were broadcast out from the stations. People within the local areas all the way into other countries could hear the broadcast. So if you were an agent and you were to have a code sheet, and at 5 o'clock on, let's say, 7.35 megahertz, you would listen to the station, knowing full well they would break in and give a repetition of numbers. You would write those numbers down, put it to the code sheet, and get your orders. You would know what to do and proceed from there. But also, if you were a programmed MK Ultra and you receive those numbers, what it would do then would trigger the multiple personality in a selective manner, meaning that if you had one that was the assassin, if you had one that just did espionage, or one that would do just spying, to go into a corporation, this is how they would trigger them. Now, this is done in many, many different ways. And so if you have not ever heard of such a thing, I encourage you. There is a website called hfunderground.com. Now, if you go there, you'll get a listing, that's hfunderground.com, a listing of these numbering stations, what frequency they are on, and what time they broadcast, and you can hear for yourself this being done. Now, a lot of people in the United States do not have shortwave. Now, I encourage you to get a shortwave radio, because when there are issues in our times that are coming, shortwave is going to be the only real communication. Now, there'll be some that'll say, well, it's not going to work because there may be radiation fallout. Well, I beg to differ, because the U.S. Naval knew full well that during nuclear attack, the only communication that was going to be possible was shortwave. Satellites are not going to work because of the higher frequencies, the particles in the air, the atmosphere, because of the bomb that went off. So shortwave is the way to go. And if you do not have a shortwave, there's also shortwave modern rogue radio.com. And what that means is you can go to this on the internet, and I think it's in New Zealand, one of the colleges there. I think it's New Zealand, but anyways, they have a shortwave receiver set up, and you can go on and select what you want to listen to. So from your computer, you would now have a shortwave radio. You're receiving in a different part of the world, and it's being, brought to you via through the internet, but you are able to hear the transmissions in Europe. You are able to hear those stations that are designated in hfunderground.com. And again, you'll get a taste. In fact, people that have gone to it, that have investigated, they get hooked on it because they hear things that they normally wouldn't hear before. And now they have the opportunity to listen to what was old technology. They have the ability to just hear things they would normally not hear. So again, in general broadcast, even local radio stations, there can be sub-audio tones that can be just low enough that you really don't hear it. So it's like a subliminal message. And that too can be one that triggers, because everything we're talking about here really is about triggering someone. Are you someone who's been traumatized, a satanic ritual abuse, been under MK Ultra? Can you be triggered? Are there sleepers all over the United States, all over different countries, that will be and can be triggered by these broadcasts? Your cell phone, for instance, it too, because of the ability for psychotronics, voice to skull technology, the cell towers and combined and even broadcast can do the same thing. It's just, see, over in Europe, that internet has firewalls. Otherwise, they wouldn't be able to listen to a lot of the things that we do, because their servers are blocked. When I was in Taiwan, I found that out. And so the different technologies are used and combined together, compounded together, to do this mind control. They can be on the phone too, and I'm going to be handing this over to Trish here in a moment, and she'll discuss some of this. So in either case, I want you to understand that this technology can come in many, many different ways, and just be aware of it. And when I talk about the radio quiet zone, if you have the opportunity to go there and you're having issues and it goes away, then just think of that. Just take a nice vacation and know that this is not going to be. All right, so I'm going to bring Trish on. I've got a lot more, but I don't want to go too late tonight. So Trish, this is the second time you've been on. Thank you for joining. Make sure your mic's on. And so you were telling me that years ago that you would get a phone call on a landline, and you would pick up the phone, and there would be several repeated numbers, or a woman's voice that would give these numbers. And it happened several times, and you had some things that maybe were a bit odd that took place, but you never really connected them together because at the time you weren't really aware of this. Can you bring that up and just tell us?
Yes, it was about 6 years ago, and that was before I was awake, and I didn't realize all these unusual things started happening to me in this time period. I was working in Pasadena, California, and that's another long story, but I've had some unusual experiences. Some of the clients were like JPL. And during this time frame, I'd be driving to work on the 210, and I would see black helicopters overhead. I would have like some weird vibrations when I was sitting at it only happened at work. When I was sitting at work in Pasadena, I would get some weird vibration and muscle twitches, like my eye would twitch for no reason, or maybe an area on my arm. And I just kind of giggled about it because I didn't understand what was going on. Incidentally, this building I worked in was right next to the Scottish Mason building. So, yeah, but at the same time frame, when I was at home, our phone would ring, and I would answer it, and I would get the telephone, doo doo doo, if you'd like to make a call, blah, 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 blah. And then it would repeat with a string of numbers. And this happened a lot, several times in the evening. Sometimes We wouldn't pick up the phone because we were eating dinner, and the machine would answer, the answering machine, and we could hear same thing. And it happened a lot. And this was, like I said, at the same time period I was working in Pasadena and all those other unusual incidences. And I was also telling Scott that it was after this time that I started making dramatic life changes. And yeah, I don't know if that was related to the voice or to the phone tones and the helicopters and everything.
Well, the coincidence is just that's not going to be whatever they were doing because of the past that you had brought up before has to have some connection. Now, when I lived in LA back in the 70s and part of the 80s, the phone company had an issue where if you tapped on the receiver, if you remember the old landlines, you would make the dial tone go away. And that would put you on a network where literally if someone was at another part, if I was in Alhambra or in Pico and someone was up in North Hollywood, if they did that too, you would be on a massive party line. And supposedly the phone company couldn't figure out why that happened and that they tried to do everything to stop it. But I think there was an intention of that. And I think what was going on, because of all the occult activity, because of those things that were being established at that particular time for mind control, this was one way to keep track because cell phone technology didn't exist. There was other things, that they could have used, but wasn't available back then. And I think that might have been it. But you yourself, dealing with people that have been brought into your life, people that you've experienced, now that you look back, you've experienced things of gang stalking, harassment, different types of techniques to keep you off balance, and meaning that, you question yourself whenever they do something to you and cause you to, just like a gaslighting. Mm-hmm. Otherwise, you think you're crazy. That really didn't happen. You're unable to process that. And so the information that you've been putting together, I'm really just going to turn it over to you to talk about that and just feel free to lay it out.
Okay. Well, I don't know if you want to go over like triggers or I had also done some extensive research on the different types of mind control. You pretty much covered all the technology or a great deal of it. But mind control is pretty much, it's everywhere, especially in the media. And I believe they figured out a long time ago, Anton LaVey admits that he used the TV. It's as like a satanic altar to bring Satanism to the general population. And that's why you'll notice over time, TV has changed quite a bit, but it's that slow process. It's so slow. It's like the frog boiling in the pot analogy. They just slowly have been turning up the heat probably since the 50s, because I now and then we'll watch a show together and the old time shows, and my goodness, quite a change to what they have on TV today, or at least the last time I watched TV. It's changed quite a bit, and this is an intentional change. So we have mind control pretty much in just we're at war right now. It's a silent war, but we're being bombarded. The TV, the movies, and the reason why they're using this is because when you're watching a movie or you're watching TV, you kind of just zone out. You go into like a lower brainwave state, almost like a dream. So this is a perfect opportunity for them to implant subliminal messages. It might be something, oh goodness, back in the old days, they used to actually turn off TV at night. It wasn't like they didn't have programming 24 hours. And if you remember the, what was it, the national anthem?
Yes.
They'd close with, and, and it would be in between. You could probably Google this or look it up on YouTube. They have quick flashes of like, obey, listen to your government, blah, blah, blah. But it was so quick, your mind registered it, your subliminal mind measured it and picked it up and absorbed it, but your eyes didn't see it, right? So this is one way back in the old days, okay, so this has been going on forever and ever, or since TV's been out there, and slowly they've been turning up the pot. It went from jolly gee, lassie, oh boy, and to the stuff they have on the last time we watched TV. It's quite a change. It's not gee whiz anymore. I remember when I was a kid in the old black and white days, the mom and the dad would sleep in separate beds. I think they even did that on Brady Bunch.
Yeah, well, Leave It to Beaver, any of those shows were like that. I Love Lucy, I think, really was where that was well established.
Yeah, and so it's changed quite a bit, but this is just an example of the slow boil, the frog boiling in the pot. It's just such tiny little increments that people aren't noticing it. But I challenge you to go back to 1950s, go on YouTube, look at an old Lassie or Lost in Space, and look at the difference. There was respect for the parent. There was no bad words. It was quite a change to what they have today. However, one thing I noticed has flipped is smoking. Because back in those days, like the old movies and the old TV shows, they smoked all the time. And for some reason, I'm not sure why, but they pulled that out. Maybe they want your money to go somewhere else.
Well, I think the cancer organizations really pushed on that. I wanted to bring up, too, that TV media has been used since the late 30s. Germany was well advanced. The transmitters were actually mechanical. It's kind of bizarre to think that, but they were actually capable of broadcasting TV in Germany when Hitler was on the rise, and they used it as a tool. And the power of suggestion really was what they were doing. So it's been around a long time.
Oh yeah. So what I think the whole point of all this is the predictive programming. Is their intent is to numb us through the slow drip that we will eventually come to accept, and it's no big deal. They're numbing us to human value, human life, okay, and they're glorifying egomaniac behavior. You can see that with TV shows. 007, James Bond, he's got like these hotties, that's like, oh wow, I want to be like him. For a while there, that was kind of the big thing. Another thing media has been doing to us, TVs and movies especially, is they've been mocking Christians. Now, it's been very, very slow pot boil again. This isn't just overnight. But think about like Edward Scissorhands, Misery, Footloose. Those are just a few examples of movies where they've portrayed Christianity or Christian people as prudes or crazy or wackos. So I'm sure it's a lot more now, but that's just an example. Another thing, you guys, I'm sure you've noticed product placement. That started probably, I don't know, maybe 15 years ago. With Survivor, they'd have a reward of Doritos and Gatorade. Actually, even back in the old wrestling shows, the ring might have had a logo like Babe Fabergé Brut Cologne right there in the middle of the ring. That's product placement. That's been going on. Another huge thing is symbology. I don't know if you've noticed that, they might throw a devil horn and, actually I notice politicians are doing it all the time on both sides. You'll see it like, especially in print advertisement. I don't really follow the Enquirer, but, it's kind of like the online Enquirers type stuff, like TMZ and, things like that. They'll show these celebrities and they're always doing some kind of a demonic hand sign, whether it be the 666, which they like to play off as it's A-OK when it's not, or they'll do the satanic hand sign and say it's I love you or rock and roll. We've all been duped into believing that that's what these things meant or what they mean, and it's not. Let's see. Another way that the media is using mind control is they're promoting bad habits. Not so much smoking anymore, but drinking, sleeping around. They brought a lot of entertainment back in the old days. It was a diversion technique so that you're not like really paying attention to what's going on. It's the old magician tricks, like, hey, look over here, don't pay attention. So you'll notice that's happening all the time in the media. It's like this really, it's exhausting mentally on all of us. It's taken a toll because every week we have 1 to 2 traumas brand new to deal with, whether it's a migrant caravan or accusations of sexual abuse to somebody who's going to be high up on, it's just one traumatic event after another. They're just hammering us. And I'm not sure I'm pretty sure that's just to suppress information. And it's also traumatizing. So it depresses us. Let's see. So that's TVs and movies. I mentioned earlier that, print advertising. Oh, this is a big one. No, I don't think Scott's ever talked about this, but on air, but they have been fooling us for the longest time. Back even in Shakespeare's day, it was kind of common knowledge. They would do a reversal of the sexes on stage. So you're watching a play and the star, is a romantic, female-male relationship, and the male would actually play the female role. Well, that's happening now in print and on TV. It's very common, and it's been going on since probably since Hollywood.
Oh, absolutely. Trannies everywhere. It's, and you got to remember the mixing of the sex is a Baphomet circumstance. And what it means is the Bible's very clear. You're either a man or a woman. Now, you can be traumatized, you can be hurt, you can be wounded, and be dealing with a demonic situation as an individual that causes you to be confused because your sexuality was morphed when you were raped at 3 years old. That's understandable. That's where the power and the blood of Jesus Christ comes to heal you. But that's not taking place. They want to remove all that. And so what we're seeing is a satanic move to infect society into accepting the Baphomet way, meaning exchange of the sex or a individual being both sex. And that is just a train wreck ready to happen.
Yeah, and when I first heard about this, I don't know, maybe last year, I was in shock. I didn't want to believe it. None of us wants to believe it. That your favorite celebrity that you've watched grown up is really the opposite gender. I know it seems really far-fetched. It really does. But if you just start to dig in and start researching, look at the research what a male skeleton is supposed to look like. Research what a female skeleton. Ladies, I had a lot of body images growing, self-esteem issues growing up because I didn't look like the girl in the magazine who was airbrushed. And come to find out, maybe she didn't put weight on her thighs because she doesn't have the baby-bearing hips, Yeah,
it was actually a male.
Yeah. And this has been going on for a long time. They've kind of subtly brought it in through musicians. They might have toyed with the idea like Prince, whether or not he's male or female, I'm not sure, but he admitted openly on Oprah he was both. I think he used the word androgen. And he is a very small framed. My brother saw Billy Idol at I think it was one of those amusement parks in Georgia, and he said the man was tiny, like a woman, So the thing is, like us ladies, we're looking up to these 6 foot, long, leggy, gorgeous models who have no shape to their hips, you know, and come to find out, a lot of them are probably not even real women, probably the majority of them. It does seem far-fetched, but think about it. How many people have you heard have gone out to chase the Hollywood dream? And how many actually make it? And I'm telling you, there's some very talented people that never get in. And why is that? Well, I think it's a good old boys club or a good old girls club. It's very closed off. I believe the only way in is through either it's bloodline, you're born into it. Maybe your mom and dad are, actors and actresses already, like the Curtises or Jamie Lee Curtis or her Kate Hudson, they're born into it. Or perhaps there's a deal made with the devil. I've heard lots of celebrities and musicians have admitted to that. Straight up, they admit it. You can go on YouTube and Google it. Celebrities that admit to selling their soul to the devil. You'd be surprised. And then I think the other way is maybe they were groomed for it, like MK Ultra monarchs.
Absolutely.
So, and then the fourth way would be through maybe they were brought up in a cult family and the mom and dad, as a sacrifice, agreed to raise their child as the opposite gender. So you get because they're really trying to push the Baphomet, agenda right now. That's like the big thing in the last probably year, to where they're really pushing it hard in the schools. And now it's like, shame on you if you use the wrong adjective. It's just like everything is upside down and wonky. Oh my goodness, my grandparents would have a cow if they knew how much things have changed. Now, Scott had mentioned a lot of...
I wanted to mention, I could hear my father now saying, the boy ain't right.
Yeah, they definitely had their sayings back in those days. Scott went over all the technology, but one thing I don't know if he really dug in on was the music industry and how they use a certain frequency.
Go ahead.
Well, I'm not sure what the frequency is, but there is information out there that the like, for example, in some of these false 501c3 churches, they may have their music set to a certain frequency.
Well, I did do a show a little over a year ago, and you can go back to that. But the lyre, which was the harp that David used, and to soothe Saul. And that resonant, or that frequency, which is also, we talked with Eric Dollard about that what they had done is they've taken the notes or the chords and they went up. So it's off frequency now, or off resonance, I should say. And because of that, then instead of bringing you into a state of relaxation, it actually brings you into a state of hyperness. And so this is an influence that is not godly, was not God's plan. It's a demonic plan. And this is what we have in the churches.
And definitely on the radio. I mean, I've seen, just any teenager blasting their music, and, you say, okay, you'll notice that their attitude and their demeanor might change. They might throw up the hang loose hand sign, and stick their tongue out, and bop their head around, like, because they're listening to heavy music, or heavy metal music, or rap. It really does. I mean, I have to say, as a child or as a teenager of the 80s, I was the same way. I mean, I didn't know, but I could listen to a song and I would feel all sentimental and lovey-dovey, and then another song comes on, and next thing I know, I'm like, yeah, let's rock this town. So, and then sometimes you might have a song that makes you feel a little frisky. So it just, music industry is a huge part of mind control. As with the evening news, with all these, can I say the FF, false flags, every few weeks you're hit with a big one, and oh my goodness, talk about traumatizing. And your mind, you just, you don't even know what to think, because I mean, it's just like, and they're always asking for money on GoFundMe too. I don't know if you noticed that, but it's like, goodness gracious, you're paying these people to lie. I'm sure a lot of these things are real, or real people get hurt is what I'm trying to say. I'm not saying people don't get hurt, but a lot of it is staged. And Scott's done shows, and I'm sure you've all researched, you've seen it on ads on Craigslist for performance actors and
Yeah.
things of that nature.
Crisis actors.
Yeah. So, I mean, it's done, and there are companies out there that admit, they put ads out on Craigslist looking for people, and it's always right before. They call them drills. We're having a drill. It's so funny because, you have people who've done all this extensive research and call them out and, here's proof A, B, C didn't happen. Here's all this proof. And what happens? They get pulled off. They get pulled off social media.
Mm-hmm.
They highly, highly regulated. So you can't even, it's like you're a criminal and you go to jail, social media jail, or lose your channel of all your hard work and videos if you just tell the truth and you just say, this is what I've noticed. You get flagged. This is like, we're losing our freedom of speech here, you good guys. Another way they're controlling us is through social media. Scott stays out of it, probably for a good reason.
Oh, I can't stand Facebook. It absolutely irritates me. I just want nothing to do with it. I know exactly what it is, and I've warned everyone about Facebook, but everyone seems to be addicted to it.
Yeah. Once you get started, it's hard to stop. I'm guilty of it. But what it does is it's very traumatizing. It's very traumatizing to go on your news feed and find out, oh, now look what's happening. And it's maddening if you really think about it, because you got one friend over here who thinks this way, and he's pulling up, sounds like legit resources, the main media. You think, oh, okay, so this is legit story because it's coming from one of the big news people. And then you go and another friend's posting a link that's saying exactly the opposite from another news, major news resource. It's kind of like you feel like you're in the middle. You're like in this tug of war, and it's like between the left and the right. And my goodness, it's so depressing because you don't know who's telling the truth. It's almost like when you're a mom and you have two fighting kids, and one saying he did it, one saying she did it, and you don't know who to believe. But it's very traumatizing. It's depressing. It gives you just that dreaded feeling, but yeah, you gotta look. It's just like an accident. You gotta look. And really what I think it's designed for, not only to spy, to get your information and know where you are at every given second, but think about it, it's also putting you against somebody that you might really love and care about. It's causing a lot of turmoil between men and women, black and white, legals and non-legals. I mean, just, it goes on and on. It's intentional, and it's really hard. I mean, I've got a lot more notes here, and I know we're going to be wrapping up soon. So should I just end it with other types of mind control, like where it's coming from?
Sure.
Yeah. Okay. So also another source of our mind control is coming from our education system.
And that's huge.
Yeah, it is huge. My oldest son used to tell me, Mom, history is written by the victor. And I'm not sure where he got that from, but it's true. What we've been told, how do we really know it's true? What we've been taught in school, how do we know? Because we weren't there. And we, slowly over time, they've changed the books, the history books. We're just told, okay, when I was a little girl in school, I would raise my hand and ask questions, and I was a good kid. I never got in trouble, but I was very inquisitive. And a lot of times the stuff they were teaching us just didn't make sense. And I'd raise my hand and ask the question, and I'd get the roll of the eyes and like, oh, here's troublemaker Trish, And I wasn't doing it to be a smart aleck. I was really like, well, if that's the case, then why is this? And just, it's frustrating. I'm sure a lot of kids have dealt with that. Let's see. One thing we noticed from our friend Eric Dollard is that a lot of times historical figures such as Einstein may get the credit for something he really didn't do. You know, he could be just playing a role. He mentioned J.J. Thompson.
Yeah. Well, I keep thinking of Back to the Future when the professor realized or heard for the first time that Ronald Reagan was president, and the words that came out of his mouth was, "The actor?"
Yeah.
Well, they were telling us that that's really what he was. He was just acting the role because Bush was really the one pulling the strings. Go ahead.
And again, we have another actor in office, if you think about it, because Trump did the Apprentice. Let's see. I want to go back to my notes. Churches are used a lot for mind control. Now, I am a Christian, and I've mentioned that the last time I was on, but I'm going to just call it like I see it and let you know a lot of the churches are run by charismatic leaders that claim to have a spiritual connection with God, but really they're sellouts. They are part of a 501c3, which means they get a tax break status. And in exchange, they're going to lead a lot of people to hell because they're suppressing vital information. They leave out important information like the importance of deliverance.
All right. Well, they sign away their constitutional right of freedom of speech. So they can't criticize the government. They can't bring anything up that is controversy to the state of the government. And the sad thing of it is the churches already have tax breaks. And Lyndon B. Johnson put that into place when he was establishing the Great Society.
Yes. So they're up there. They're softening messages. They're spreading the prosperity doctrine. I think one famous lady, I don't know if I can say her name.
Oh, give it out. I don't care.
Okay. Joyce Meyer. You know, they're all about, you give and it'll come back to you. And I heard
she gives all right. She has a golden toilet, so she gives quite a bit.
Yeah, it's like $23,000. Or $23,000 toilet and 5 houses and $110,000.
And let me point something out for those who are Joyce Meyer's fans. Okay, one, that's a man, baby, and sorry, but the other two is that she made the statement that she had gotten a revelation that when Jesus went down into the bowels of the earth, when he died on the cross, that the demons beat the snot out of him the whole time he was down there. That is insane. And when she's at her concerts or whatever she has, she'll say gods with an S and not God. And she also refers to that once you open up your eye for the all-seeing eye, then that's when you're able to receive. So she tells us who she is.
Good point. And also, not just with Joyce Meyer, but all of the famous evangelicals watch for hand signs, okay? I seen her on a video yesterday. She was throwing up the hand signs, okay? The Baphomet hand sign. And another thing I noticed is Kevin Copeland.
Yeah.
Or Ken Copeland. Kenneth Copeland.
Kenneth Copeland.
Kenneth Copeland. They all do it. You'd show me one big time evangelical that doesn't, and I'll be surprised. One other thing, I've got a lot more notes on, but that kind of is more towards just MK Ultra, and I know we got to close, but I want to mention when Eric was on, he had mentioned the ladies or the women in white. And I had been collecting notes throughout the year, and I'm not sure where I got it from. Maybe it was an old John Todd interview. But I was going through my notes, and I noticed that one thing witches have in common, a lot of times they're not just wearing all black, they wear all white. And I want to tell you, I noticed Benny Hinn wears all white, at least on the videos I've seen.
Yeah. Well, same thing in the court systems with judges wearing black.
Oh, yeah.
Because they're wizards. They are one to control. So when the robe comes all the way back to the occult, it has nothing to do with judicial, does not have anything to do with establishment of laws that better man. It's a way of holding their authority over mortals, because that's really the way they see us.
Yeah. And color is a persuasive factor, and it does alter your mood. I'm a designer, so I have one of the classes we had to take, a couple classes, was on color theory. So color has a way of influencing people too. So it just goes on and on. There's so much to go over with mind control, but that's pretty much how, I guess what I went over was mainly the media, and what you went over was more the technology. Maybe another time I can come on and I can go into depth on MK Ultra.
Yeah. Okay. Well, again, I just wanted to point out the facts about the radio quiet zone, the triggers of the technology that go all the way back to the Cold War and even prior to that, and what we have today. And then of course, Trish brought up what we're dealing with in many, many ways. And so just understand that, again, with what's coming and where we're at, regardless of what side of the fence you're on, your politics and your religion, there's only one way to God, and that's through Jesus Christ. And anything that is attempted to bring you closer to God by any of the means is going to fail. So when I say Jesus plus nothing, I mean Jesus plus nothing. All right. Well, we're going to call it for tonight. Trish, thank you for being on.
Thank you.
And we'll see you later.